Welcome to Cultumatum, the podcast uncovering the dark realities of cults and human trafficking. I'm your host, Anonymous Andrew, and each week we dive deep into the manipulation, control, and courageous escapes that define these worlds.
And I'm Melody, Andrew's co-host. Having experienced the depth of a cult firsthand, specifically the House of Yahweh, I am here as an advocate for fellow survivors.
The views and opinions expressed by our guests are their own and do not reflect the official policy or position of Cultumatum or its affiliates. The content discussed on this podcast are based on personal experiences and should not be construed as factual or legal advice. Neither the host nor the guest are liable for any statements made during the episodes. Listeners are encouraged to conduct their own research and seek professional advice where appropriate.
And before we dive into today's episode, we want to issue a trigger warning. Some episodes may cover explicit and potentially disturbing subjects such as sexual abuse, rape, human trafficking, suicide, and other sensitive subjects. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to the Cultumatum podcast, a culture of cults and human trafficking. And my name is Anonymous Andrew, and today with me is my co-host Melody. Hello, Melody.
Hi, Andrew. We have got a guest today that I'm really excited about. It is another member of my cult, the House of Yahweh. Leanne Walker is here to share her story with us, and I am excited to hear Leanne's story. I know some of Leanne's story, but you never know what somebody's going to share when they come on a podcast like this. And so I'm excited to hear, maybe even I'll find out some stuff about her story that I don't know. Leanne, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yes, welcome, Leanne. I almost feel like you two ladies know each other. I'll just sit back and listen, but I don't know where you'd like to start. From the beginning, I guess?
When did you join, Leanne? Because I was actually wondering that. I was thinking that earlier today, I was like, did Leanne join was she already there when I was there? We joined in 1989. When did you join?
Actually, we joined the same year, 1989.
Oh, okay.
We came to Pentecost of 89.
Okay, and our first feast was Passover, so we were there one feast before you. So, yeah, we joined around the same time. And how old were you at that time, Leanne?
I was 11.
11. I knew you were pretty young. So what got you, like your mom, because I know you came with your mom. What got your mom interested, or how did she get involved in the House of Yahweh?
So my mom was working at an optical shop in the mall and on a Saturday, and somebody came in and they were telling her how she was like breaking the Sabbath and stuff, and gave her some information. And so she was like, well, I'm going to just go check it out, and see what it's about. And we came up that summer to Pentecost. I had no clothes that were legal for them.
Appropriate for the
yes, appropriate. So yeah, I had tank tops and shorts, and none of that was appropriate. But we came up that summer. This is my first time ever flying on an airplane. And she decided that she liked it. Then we ended up moving up there in August. So she got a job up there.
That was quick.
With another optical company. And we moved in August.
So you moved within 2 months of going to, your first feast was in June. You moved there in August, fully.
Yeah.
Wow, that had to be a big adjustment. What was that like for you as being an 11-year-old, a child, and that your whole world had to change at that point?
Because it was summer, I wasn't in school, but then I ended up having to go to the House of Yahweh school, and which was very different than what I was used to. And so it was a very big adjustment for me, having to leave everybody that I knew behind, go to a new place that I didn't know anybody, and do all these things that I was unsure about. I didn't know, I was 11, I just went with my mom, so.
Right. So do you feel like you believed it, or were you sucked into the belief at that time, or were you just there because your mom took you there and you didn't have a choice?
At first I was just there because my mom took me there. And I didn't have a choice. I told her she was crazy, and when I turned 18, I was going to go move in with my sister. So,
but that did eventually change for you then, because I know that you stayed for quite a while, and you.
Yes. So I was there for 19 years. And so because I got married at 17 to my ex-husband,
who I'm just going to throw out there is still there and is a pretty prominent elder in the organization. He's one of the top elders in the organization. I won't say his name just because I won't, because it sounds like you're not going to, so I'm going to respect that. But yes, he is a top elder. So anybody who knows Leanne probably knows who he is. I'm just going to say doesn't have the best reputation for. He's pissed a lot of people off. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Including you, I'm sure.
When you say pissed a lot of people off, you mean within the House of Yahweh?
Both.
Yeah, a lot of ex-members. He's one of the people who guards the gate and tries to keep the ex-members out, and a lot of control over the current members. There's a lot of animosity. Okay. He's built up a lot of animosity, and I knew him when I was there. He was actually in our little group of teenagers, and he was around our age, and I've heard that he's changed, because I wouldn't have said that he was kind of a jerk, but I've heard that he became kind of a jerk. I wouldn't have described him that way from what I knew of him when I was there, but I think the power went to his head. That's my theory.
Yes,
but we'll let Leanne say that, because Leanne knows him better than I do. She was married to him, so.
Well, and giving somebody that kind of power, that especially in a cult, will change a person.
Yes.
Yeah. So his parents were excommunicated. To keep him is when they cast lots to make him an elder.
And that's when his personality changed?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Andrew. You had a question?
What? Because I'm not a cult insider, what does cast lots mean?
So they throw pieces of paper with yes or no on them, and the one that comes back closest to them is the answer. So that's how they determine who's going to be an elder.
Do you get nominated?
Yes.
And then they're voted on. It's almost like an election.
Kind of, but they say that by throwing the piece of paper, it's putting it in the hands of the creator, and the creator is deciding, because apparently the creator has control over where these pieces of paper go. And so they say that is now the will of Yahweh, whether or not they become an elder, a deacon, a deaconess, whatever they're being nominated to be as far as a title goes.
Okay, help me out here. I'm envisioning a man sitting on a chair, or maybe standing, I don't know, and a circle of people around him throwing pieces of paper at him. Is this?
This is not done in front of the congregation.
Okay.
No, it's done in the back office, and they throw them towards the wall, and then whichever one rolls back closest to them is supposed to be the answer.
So is there anything written on it? Yes or no? Or
one says yes and one says no.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand the process where.
Yeah.
So you throw a piece of paper against the wall, it bounces off. He's standing somewhere near the wall, and the paper that rolls closest to him, they open up and see what it says, yes or no.
Yes.
Okay.
And I will say that is from the Bible. It is actually in the Old Testament. It is an Old Testament thing. So it is biblical, technically. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
That I'm sure there are other cults and organizations that use this same technique based on the fact that it is written in the Bible about casting lots.
I'm learning. I've never heard of this before. So, okay.
Something new.
Yeah.
So I'm going to back up here a little bit, Leanne. Were you when you got married at 17? I'm going to assume that your mom had to agree or sign off on that in the state of Texas, or could you legally choose to get married at 17?
I couldn't choose to get married at 17, but he and I never had a marriage license.
Oh, okay. So you never had a legal marriage.
Yeah, so we never had a legal marriage. We did have to go through a divorce because we had the children. So in the state of Texas, we were common law married. And so when we separated, I had to go through a divorce in order to get any benefits from the marriage for the children, any child support or anything.
question. Okay. Again, only because I'm either not familiar with family law or wedding law, but I got married in the Roman Catholic Church, but I don't remember going to town hall. When you get married in the church, doesn't the priest or that church file the paperwork with the state?
So you have to go
Or-
and pick up your marriage license from like the county clerk or whatever, and then you take it when you get married. And we never did that. We never went and got that paper. I had a ceremony,
Yeah.
but we never went and got that paper. And my mom never signed anything, but she would have had to, especially considering he was 8 years older than I was.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Now I see. Okay. So you got married in the church, but it was officiated within the church, but not by the state of Texas.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Not recognized legally. They could have filled out paper to have it recognized legally, but were they discouraging that at that point, Leanne? Because I know that kind of became the new teaching after I left. Yeah.
Yes.
And how long were you married?
13 years.
And because I know some of the teachings, I'm going to ask, were you his only wife during those 13 years?
No.
How many wives did he have by the time that you left?
He had one other wife when I left.
Just out of curiosity, do you know how many he has now?
As far as I know, he only has one. And it's not the one that he was married to when I left.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Well, this is going to bring up the question when we chatted with the Mormon guests. Polygamy was practiced back then?
Oh, yes.
Oh.
Oh.
Back then, it's as far as I know, they're still doing it now. As far as I know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that's not legal in the state of Texas. How do they get away with that? Or they just do it the way you do?
Because they don't have marriage licenses.
Because they aren't legal marriages. Just like she said, she never went and got legally married. Remember, if you remember, Andrew, the polygamy teaching is why I left the cult, which is actually this Leanne's ex-husband. That is why his parents were excommunicated as well. It was during that same time period. There was a large exodus of members based on a disagreement about this polygamy teaching. There were a lot of people.
Because your leader was caught cheating on his wife with the secretary.
Correct.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And then his excuse was, "Oh, she's just my second wife," and that's how it began.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And that we're all now going to have the ability as men to have multiple wives.
And that's when a bunch of the women said, "No way," and you guys all exited.
And some of the men. Yeah. There was a pretty big loss of membership during that time.
My ex-husband's dad was an elder at the time.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
So I guess my next question is then for you would be when you married him, the multiple marriage teaching was already kind of in place. So the polygamy teaching was already in place. How long before he took a second wife, and how did you handle that mentally, emotionally? I mean, did that change your views on polygamy once that actually started to be part of your life?
So, it did change my views. We were married for 11 and a half years when he was sent to another state to bring her down. She was older than him and had a couple of kids already that were teenagers. And so he was sent to Pennsylvania, and he drove her down with all of her stuff and basically parked her in my backyard and built a 10-foot privacy fence between us. And then he was like never coming over to my house. Like he was just always over there.
Okay. Either I missed something or I'm just not understanding this crazy cult of yours. Excuse me. You said that they sent him to Pennsylvania from Texas. How did he meet her? How did he know about it? Did they arrange this or
they arranged that? They arranged it.
Okay. So one day he woke up and they said, "You now are going to have a second wife. Go get her. She's in Pennsylvania." Something to that effect.
They had them writing letters to each other.
Okay.
So they were
prior
courting
to him going up there.
Do you think this was done on purpose to solidify this whole polygamy thing? That They were trying to get off the ground?
Well, at that point, it was already off the ground.
Okay.
This was in like 06, 07,
Oh.
because my
Okay.
youngest son was just over a year.
So he comes home, and like you said, parked her in the backyard and built a fence. And you lived under the same roof, but he split the house in half?
Well, no, we each had our own mobile home. And he
Okay.
built just a fence in between the two of them.
And he stayed mostly, once he came
Over
down,
there,
he stayed
yes.
with her.
Yes.
With her kids.
Yes.
And
you and your kids stayed in the other home.
Yes.
And I'm just going to say, you clarify this, Leanne, because I left before a lot of this polygamy stuff started being implemented. I think that was fairly common, is that when men tended to get a second or third or subsequent wife, the original wife was usually kind of shoved to the side. Now they've almost been disregarded. They're not an ex-wife, but they are almost treated that way by the husband at this point, because now he's got a new fresh wife and he really doesn't want much to do with the original wife. Would you agree with that statement?
Yes.
That is absolutely disgusting and horrible.
Yeah. And the only one of my children that really saw him during that time was my oldest son, because he was over the age of 4.
And how many children did you have at that point, Leanne?
5.
Wow.
So he's next door in the other trailer. I'm guess obviously this is a difficult and question to ask. He didn't come over and be intimate with you. Now he's with the new wife. But did he visit his children?
That's the only reason he would come over, was to be intimate with me. He didn't want to spend time with me, just to be intimate, and then be on his way.
And not spend time with the children.
Not spend time with the children, really.
Oh, so I got it backwards. I thought he was coming over to see the children. No, he came over to have sex with you, and then
and then go back to his other life.
God. Oh.
Wow. So
wow.
So how long? I mean, so you left then? That was at 11 years, and you left after 14.
I left. I left at 13, so I left in 08.
13. So it was only 2 years after that. So
yes.
So it did that, essentially, having experienced that and going through that, is that kind of what shattered your faith, so to speak? And you want to share with the audience what that was like for you?
Yeah, so it was that, and it was being told by the counselors that there was no hope for me, because I was questioning things. And so,
I mean, do you remember anything specific that you were questioning?
So I questioned why my ex and I had an argument, and, then I was the sister of Satan, and because I had no respect. And then he called the counselors, who said that because we were arguing, we had to be separated for a week. Like, I couldn't see him at all for a week. For 7 days. I was grounded from my husband. And so I was on the phone with them, and I'm like, well, I don't understand why. Like, I don't understand why I can't, like, if he's supposed to help me do this with the children or come take the boys here, why I can't ask him where he's at or when he's going to be picking them up or anything. And they said, there's no hope for you. There's no way that we can help you. And I said, well, if there's no hope for me, then why am I talking to you? And I hung up the phone. But that was the gist of it. Like, I was like, why can't I do these things? Because I wasn't believing without seeing. So you had to believe without seeing anything, like just with what was being taught to you or being told to you. And because I questioned things, I didn't have that belief.
I have a question / theory.
Okay.
Did he have any clout at this time?
Oh, yes.
All right. Do you think that he went to them and said, I want her out? It sounds like they were trying to get rid of you.
Oh, I'm sure they were, but I don't think they were necessarily trying to get me completely out because they wanted the children to stay.
Oh, of course. Oh,
And
so
if
if
they
you
get
go,
me
the
out,
children.
I'm going to fight for my children and keep my children. And at that time, the judge out there hated the House of Yahweh. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
And
They would. So he couldn't. They couldn't kick you out, take your children and give them to him and the second wife, because you would fight that in the state of Texas, and
yes.
this judge would have said no. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
well, and
Okay.
I think some of that
Wow.
is too, Andrew. I believe that some of it is that not only do the husbands tend to disregard the original wife, but I think the congregation as a whole has less respect for an original wife when a subsequent wife comes along. I don't know that, but from the stories I've heard, and Leanne, you can confirm or deny,
Mhm.
or
yeah.
give your opinion on that. I'd love to hear your opinion on that because you lived it. I didn't live it.
Yeah, so they definitely had a lot less respect for me. I was taken out of a lot of counseling things when she came into the picture. I was basically just, take care of your kids and pushed to the side. When I told him I was leaving, he was like, "Oh, you don't have to come back. I'll buy you a house in Dallas and you can live there and you don't have to come to services. Just don't take the children away." And
Wait. So where were you in the state of Texas? What city?
I lived in Clyde.
And that was close to Dallas.
No.
It's about 2.5, 3 hours.
So he was willing to buy you a house in Dallas and have you live there with the children,
Yes.
and then you would just bring them back at any time he requested or something?
Yeah. And I said that was not going to happen.
Good for you.
I did not want my girls raised in a place that they did not have a voice. Because the women there do not have a voice. They cannot speak up for themselves. Thinking that they could treat women that way.
That's good. Okay. Good for you.
Absolutely.
And so I'm guessing that was the beginning of the end, or that was the end.
Oh, that was the end.
That was the end. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
that was my
straw.
breaking point.
The straw that broke the camel's back.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Like, I was already, thinking of leaving, but the actual push was, there's no help for me. I was grounded from my husband. I was 30 years old. That was ridiculous. And just not being able to ask questions. I was like, no, I've always had a questioning mind. Never been somebody that just sits back and takes it. So.
No, and we on this podcast and many cults in the cult world, we call that critical thinking, right?
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So you began to think about
Yes.
the nonsense that was being taught to you. Okay. Good for you. All right. So the house didn't happen. Do you? So Melody, forgive me. Do you get disfellowshipped, or you just literally left?
I just left.
Okay.
I left. I left him a note that I was leaving.
Good. Okay. I don't know why that's funny, but it's a dear John.
I snuck out in the middle of the day on a Friday when he was writing a sermon. So I knew he was busy. I knew he wasn't going to be trying to see what I was doing. And
well, sure, he's not watching you.
Shopping, but I took the dog and all the kids. So
I wonder if the sermon was about having your wives under control.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing that out there.
That would have been pretty funny but that was the case.
Where
did you? Irony, that's the word. Where did you ultimately go? I mean, I'm men being visual. I'm picturing you packing the car, putting your stuff in there, throwing the kids in there, and hightailing it out of there.
Yes.
Where did you go?
So I drove to Abilene and picked up my sister and her stuff. We left the dog at my mom's house because she raised collies and that's what I had. And then we left and went to Houston.
Oh, okay.
And let me just confirm, because I know this from the audience, that I know your sister was in too at this time. I'm assuming
Yes.
she left. I don't know if she had already left. I'm not sure of the timeline for that.
So she
Or she
left
left
at
with
the
you.
same time I did.
Okay, so you guys left
Yep.
together, made that decision, left together. Your mom was still in at this time, correct?
So my mom was on her way out. So she loaned us the money to get out of town.
So she
And
was
then
Pimo at
she
this time.
followed. Yeah, my mom followed a couple weeks later.
Okay. And again, we'll just confirm to the audience. Pimo is when you're physically in, physically in, but mentally out. Meaning
Mentally out.
your mom
Right.
didn't believe it anymore, but she had to logistically figure her way out of her situation.
Correct. She
Okay.
owned a house. She had all of that stuff from my stepdad.
Yes,
And
she was all wrapped into it.
what happened to the stepdad? She was alone? Was
So
he
my stepfather died from cancer, but we also believe that it was caused by salt poisoning.
Ooh.
The
All right,
House of
and your
Yahweh
dad
had him taking full capsules of salt daily
for what purpose?
uh, to get
Oh,
rid of, like, he had previously had lung cancer, and it was to rid his body of any excess stuff.
they
So
believed it
taking
would cure
salt.
cancer. They believed it would
Yeah,
cure cancer. It was their
Every
whole,
time.
yes, their holistic teaching of what would cure cancer.
I'm sorry. What happened? So that was your stepdad.
yes.
Where? I don't talk about your dad for a second. Your
Okay.
biological father.
Yeah, we can talk about my dad. So when I was about 7, my parents split up. He left the family. I rarely saw him growing up.
So he
As
left the house of Yahweh too. Not
he
true,
was not
but
in the House of
She
Yahweh.
wasn't in.
he wasn't
No,
in.
he was not in.
Oh,
They split up when I was like 7,
okay.
And remember,
and
she didn't
he
join till
wasn't
she was
in.
11. Sorry,
Right,
Leanne. Go ahead.
and he wasn't in my life much growing up. But as an adult, we did reconnect before he passed away.
That's nice.
Oh,
That's good.
that's nice. Did I'm going to ask a personal question.
Okay.
When you spoke to him, did he have any regrets?
He he's he always did regret not being there for us. He fought a lot of demons. He was an alcoholic and fought a lot of demons, and that was very hard for him to overcome.
Yeah. Okay.
When we reconnected, he ended up living with me for the last 3 years of his life, and I took care of him when those last 4 months after he was diagnosed with cancer, and he died in my house.
Well, I'm glad that you got to build a relationship with him, or have that, build a bond with him and have memories with him that you weren't able
Mhm.
to have previously. Because I know that,
Yeah,
in the House of Yahweh, you wouldn't have been allowed to have a relationship with him. So
right.
that gave you that opportunity before he passed
Mhm.
to have that. So I'm grateful for you that you had that. And that is a part of your story I
Yeah,
didn't know. And that's wonderful.
yeah. And he was a wonderful grandfather to the children. Like, and I
Good.
think he used that as, like, he felt guilty for not being able to be there for me. And so
Mm,
he would overdo it for the kids. Like, every birthday, he would take them on he didn't drive anymore. So he would take them on the city bus and they would go to the mall and get a new Build-A-Bear every birthday. So when they were growing up, when he was there.
that's awesome.
So,
It is. It's a nice way. Yeah, that's nice.
I know part of Leanne's story that may be hard for you to share, Leanne, but you said nothing was off limits here.
yeah.
Would you like to share a little bit about the child that you lost while you were in the House of Yahweh?
Yeah. Yeah, we can talk about Sam. Sam was my first daughter. I had her when I was 19. That's actually had her the same year that Matt was ordained an elder. And so I had her, and I had her for 80 days. She died at 80 days due to SIDS. So no, just says natural causes on her death certificate. They
SIDS, as in sudden
infant
infant
death
death
syndrome.
syndrome. God, I
Yes.
haven't heard that term in many, many years.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was 27 years ago this year.
Full grown adult. Yeah, she'd be
Oh,
well into
yes.
her. Um, and part of the reason I bring up this story is because of the way it was handled by the House of Yahweh. And I know that compounded your trauma. I mean, you already had enough trauma from losing an infant, a baby. Can you share with our audience how that was handled by the House of Yahweh in a way that actually added to your trauma?
So 2 days prior to her death, I had gallbladder surgery. I had gallstones and they had to remove my gallbladder. And I was picked up from the person that kept her overnight for me. And they took us home. And that day, that was a Friday, he and I had, I don't even remember what it was about. We got into some sort of an argument about something. And he said that he was going to take her to my sister's because my sister had an infant the same age so that she could be nursed, and because I didn't need to have a baby if I was going to have that attitude. And I told him, well, you can't take my baby away from me. And that night we went to bed, and then the next morning was Saturday. We went to services. We came home. I went back to bed. I was still very tired. I got up and I nursed her around 9 o'clock that night. Was tired. So I laid down with her with the intent of, okay, well, when she's done, I'll get up and put her in bed. And woke up at 3 a.m. and she was gone. And the House of Yahweh told me that it was my fault because I argued with my husband and told him that he couldn't take my baby away, that Yahweh took my baby away to show me that she was not mine to begin with.
All right. So basically, they're saying, had you let him take the baby to wherever he was going to take her to, she may have survived.
Yes. That, and if I had not argued with him.
And right.
Yeah.
That she was being punished.
Yeah. That Yahweh punished me.
And then, was there a service for Sam?
There was a service, but we were told that we couldn't cry. We're not allowed to mourn her. So for 11 years, I was not able to mourn my child.
I'm sorry, I have to ask, I probably know the answer to this. Was there an autopsy done?
There was.
Oh, there was?
Yeah, it's required in the state of Texas when an infant dies.
And nothing suspicious was found? No?
Nope. She wasn't. There's no suffocation, nothing. They said healthy 10-week-old baby died of unknown causes. So they had to put it down as natural causes.
Because naturally, my detective instincts is foul play.
Yeah, but no.
And I'm not going to point fingers, but you know where I'm going.
She was in bed with me nursing when she passed.
Okay.
She wasn't around anybody else.
And so did they give you a reason why you were not allowed to cry or mourn her loss?
Because they said that it could potentially, Yahweh could hear those cries and bring her back. I was like, well, that's a little weird since she's already been cut open, but
makes no sense at all.
Yeah,
no.
But that's what we were told.
Do you have a theory as to what the real reason that they didn't want you to mourn her or cry? Do you? Because obviously that's not the reason, right?
I mean, in my opinion, it's because they think that they're just sleeping. They're not dead; they're asleep, and they'll wake up when we all go to.
Right.
You
guys,
not
you guys, but the House of Yahweh didn't believe in dying. Is that
correct? Correct.
Right.
You were in like an eternal slumber until we were all called to the Sea of Glass.
Till the second resurrection, yes.
You're right.
So if an adult died, did the same thing? Let's say a wife lost you. So just so I'm clear, nobody can cry, or
you can't mourn.
Can't mourn. Okay.
I have a theory about this, Leanne. I have a theory, and I don't know if my theory is correct, but this is what I think. I think that they did not really have a good explanation for why in the House of Yahweh, because they believe, we were taught we were never going to die, right? We would all live until the tribulations. Our children would never have to suffer death, all of this. Mm-hmm. And so I think that I theorize that they did not want you to mourn because they did not want you to elicit any potential sympathy from fellow members, because I think they were worried it would shake their faith. That is my theory as to why they did not want you to cry, because I think especially any other mother or parent watching a mother grieve or mourn for the loss of a child, how could you not elicit sympathy for that? I mean, I would be, if I had been there, which I wasn't, but if I had been and I had seen you mourning your child, my heart would have broke for you. And I think they didn't want that.
I think as humans, it's not, I've gone to many a funeral in my day, and especially young people who have either OD'd or died from car accidents or something. It's as a human, it's just in our. Now I understand when you grow up in a cult and they teach you certain ways, but it's natural for us to mourn the loss of somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, outside the cult world. Just so strange.
Well, and especially the loss of an infant. Who would not have
absolutely.
empathy or sympathy for somebody who's lost an infant? That's a great loss. I mean, their life has just begun, and that is hard for us as human beings to see that. And I think because they didn't have a good explanation or answer for it in the teaching that fit with the teaching, I think they didn't want anybody else to. It wasn't supposed to be sad, basically, but that's a great loss. And obviously, you know, you spent years burying that. How did you ultimately end up handling that or facing that loss, and where are you with that today?
So the day that my divorce took place in Clyde, I drove out to the cemetery afterwards. And I sat there with what I believed to be her spot, but records were not kept properly. So they only know that there are people with the last name of Hawkins buried out there. So, because...
Wait a minute. Melody, you I don't know anything about this. So when a cult member did die, they weren't given a burial plot that you could go visit?
They were given a burial plot.
Go ahead. Yeah, she's in a burial plot.
But you don't know.
Eula Cemetery. But the person that was over Eula Cemetery at that time was getting dementia, and they hadn't passed it over to somebody. And so he was just writing down Hawkins without names. And so in order to find out exactly where she is, because she's next to another infant that died during birth, but we would have to have ground penetrating radar to go in and do that. And I don't have the money for that. I don't know who does. So I vaguely remember like the background. There's a certain tree. And so I know she's in this specific area. And I know that she died in 97. And so where the one in 93 is, and then where the one in 98 is, I know that she's somewhere between those.
Right. So when you did go to visit, were you able, I'm guessing you went by yourself. Were you able to mourn then and grieve then? Okay, good. Good for you.
So, wow, that's another part of your story that I either didn't know or didn't remember, that immediately when you left, your initial instinct was to mourn the loss of your daughter that you were not able to mourn or not allowed to mourn while you were a member. That's
and then a few years later, I got a tattoo since I can't visit her because I don't live there. I have a tattoo of an angel baby with her name and her dates on my back.
Good.
So I carry her with me always.
I love
Very
that.
good. Wow, Melody, it just gets weirder and weirder. Every episode, I'm just blown away by some of the stuff that I hear going on in these cults.
And the craziest thing is, Andrew, this is my cult, so this is probably the cult you might know the most about.
Yeah, that's Well, and that's why I was a little taken back by the cemetery thing. But I guess put two and two together. If you're not supposed to die in the house of Yahweh because you go
Right.
into limbo when you hang out there until the rest of us arrive, the rest of you what? Oh,
Right.
But I never thought it through. So if somebody died in the house of Yahweh, they just put them in the ground and pretend that
Yeah.
there's no headstone, there's no
Right.
There's no mourning. No. Yeah. And
Yep.
then
They do not believe in embalming, so they have to be buried within 24 hours. So her autopsy had to be right away, and then she had to be sent right back to be buried.
and well, I think in the Hebrew faith that's very similar. They have to be
Yes.
in the ground within 3 days, and
Yeah.
so the morgue has to do that right away. They have to
Yeah.
honor those requests of a religion. Okay.
So
Wow. All right.
So Leanne, where are you today?
Yeah, I was just going to say, where are you today?
So I am currently living in Colorado. I love it here. It's beautiful. All of my children are grown. I have a 12-year-old stepdaughter. I'm married to a wonderful man who has helped me through a lot of my trauma. And I'm in college.
Oh, wow.
And yes, and I only have like 15 credits left to get my bachelor's in business. And I work for a school as a special education instructional paraeducator.
Wow, awesome. Good for you, Leanne. That's awesome. I see this is more of your story I did not know. But congratulations. That's amazing.
We typically ask this question with each guest. Where are you spiritually with your religion? Do you have a religion? Do you have a God? Do you fill in the blank?
So I am not a religious person by far. It was forced on me for too many years, and I won't force it on my children. They're allowed to choose whatever they want to believe in. I am a practicing Wiccan, and I'm a natural energy healer as well. So, which is what my business degree will go towards in opening that business.
Good for you. And I think that's Colorado is the place to be for that. There's a lot of
Yes, it is.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Wow,
more stuff I didn't know. Do you have any? I'm learning all kinds of things. That's what I told her. I said, well, we know each other, but you never know where the conversation's going to go in this podcast. So I might learn things I didn't know. Do you have any words of advice or words of wisdom for somebody that either is thinking about joining a group that they're questioning, or that finds themselves in a group that they may be wanting to try to get out of?
So looking at a group that you're thinking about getting into would be to research everything. Read everything that you can, the good and the bad. Because if you're only reading the good and only listening to the people that are there, you're not going to know exactly what's going on.
Right. Only getting half the story.
Somebody that wants to get out, do your best to find people that have left. Those are going to be your best allies. Because that's what I did. I found somebody that had left.
Wow.
Yeah, that sounds like sound advice.
For sure.
It's basically follow the ones who have already paved that path for you. So,
right.
Leanne, an amazing story, and for your strength. Thank you for your strength and your experience, your story, and that's why we like to ask at the end, where are you today? Because it sounds like you've done a lot of healing and you've moved on gracefully.
Yes.
And
I'm going to say that,
and you're in a good place
for sure. And I'm going to say that part of the reason I wanted Leanne to share about Sam is because I feel like it is important that to keep her spirit alive, so to speak, and to still speak of her. And I'm sure that there's still part of you that's always going to mourn her, and you're always going to feel that loss, but to honor her life is to still speak of her. And
right.
I appreciate you being open with us about that, because I know that's a hard part of your story. So, but we appreciate you so much coming on the show and sharing your whole story and all of your where you are today. And I've learned a lot about your story that I didn't know. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us.
Yes, thank you, Leanne, very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
We want to thank Leanne once again for coming on the show and sharing her story. I know she's been out for a while now, but and I learned things about her story that I didn't know, even though I knew Leanne back when I was in the cult, but we had enough years between us that we didn't necessarily hang out in the same circles. Although ironically enough, she ended up marrying somebody, 8 years older than her. So she ended up marrying somebody that I had hung out a lot with when I was there. What are the chances?
Yeah. And she was part of the polygamy movement,
Yes.
which is what made you leave the House of Yahweh,
Yes,
which I found interesting.
Yes.
I did not see that coming.
Oh, you did not? Oh, I didn't tell. Yes, I didn't. To the audience, I didn't give Andrew a whole lot of heads up. I kind of wanted some natural reactions from him from some of that. The shock factor.
And you got him. And you know me. When I hear something just so freaking bizarre
Yes.
that it just rocks my inner core,
Yes.
I jump in. And you're going to get me started.
Yeah.
The whole you can't mourn a child.
Yeah.
I mean, just that. There was so much that she said that I would just to the folks. We don't do video often, and one day we will be able to. And you can watch us on YouTube. I mean, or listen to us on YouTube. But if you could see the expressions on my face or my body language when I hear some of this stuff that comes out of the mouth of our guests, I'm just like, what the fuck? And I apologize. But it's like, and to the audience, and Melody knows this is why I got into this, because when I heard what was going on at the Twin Flames, it just boggled my mind. And that's, and the story is I met Melody on Facebook, and she told me her story, and she was on. And it's just fascinating to hear some of this stuff that goes on. But like today, Leanne really tugged at my heartstring. I didn't see the child. When you brought up that topic, I was like, uh-oh, what's coming next? And I did not. And here's the weird part, and I didn't want to bring it up during I am bringing it up. Sudden infant death syndrome was a big thing back when I was growing up. It was on the news, and parents were being accused of killing their kids, but they can't. And there was this controversy about they made up the syndrome so they can get out of whatever, something like that. This is like back in the 80s. And since then, I when she said the child died instantly or suddenly or something, and the acronym SIDS came to mind, and I'm like, wow, I haven't heard that term in 20, 30 years. So
but you
don't
realize
hear it anymore.
This infant died 28 years ago. This infant would be 28 years old now. So
which would put it right at the time when I was hearing a lot about it. But today you don't hear about that. Now, I don't know if it's just because it's common and it happens and they don't talk about it,
or maybe they have a new term for it that we're unaware of, Andrew, because I'm not really sure either. But I mean, I'm sure infants still do pass away, and I don't know if that when they don't have an explanation for it, if there's a new term for it. Maybe there's a new more politically correct term that we are unaware of. I'm not sure. I would have to Google.
And that's why I offered my theory. Was there foul play? Because she had mentioned that she was breastfeeding. She said, she didn't say breastfeeding. She said I was
nursing,
and which means breastfeeding.
Yes.
Did she ingest something? I'm not saying did her on purpose, but did somebody give her something that would go through the breast milk and kill the baby? Like, were they punishing her because she was already? She was on their nerves. Like they were looking. Whatever. I
don't know, because this was her first baby, and so this is before the subsequent babies. This is before the subsequent wife. This was her first child.
You're right.
This was her first child. So I don't think it was anything like that. I think that the infant died of natural causes, and that there was no explanation. But I think that the House of Yahweh certainly didn't want, like I said, I think there was a more I'm going to say nefarious reasoning for them for not wanting them to mourn or cry over their child. And I think it was because they did not want to elicit sympathy, because I think that they didn't want to have to explain to a congregation, why Yahweh would do that. Why would Yahweh take a child, right? An infant, an innocent infant.
Especially when children are revered, right? They want more children, and now they lost one. So this is why the whole thing is fascinating to me. The whole cult thing is just that it's just so bizarre. That
there are some. I mean, I'm telling you, there are some more bizarre. I've told you I could do another interview on the House of Yahweh and share more crazy stuff. That there's so much to share, and you're going to learn more because I think we may have one more guest scheduled that is an ex House of Yahweh member, another person from my cult at some point.
Okay, but, I'm in.
Yeah, we'll just keep learning more and more, because it is interesting. And for the audience, I'll just create a visual here. While Andrew was describing his shock, he literally had his fingers up to his forehead, like grabbing his brain, like in this fashion of, I can't believe this, like almost like the mind blown emoji to give the audience a visual, kind of like that. So
it's just bizarre. And I think it's because I've been around for 60 years, and I live in what I guess is considered mainstream normal society, where certain things, baby dies, we mourn, but the thing with the husband,
go ahead. With the husband?
No, the thing with the husband, when they told her to go up to Pennsylvania, bring your second wife down, they put up a fence, and it's just bizarre. There's no other word for it. It
is bizarre. And then you factor in the fact that we just recently interviewed a Mormon who was telling us, no, we don't teach polygamy. And now you've got, a House of Yahweh, we do teach polygamy. They are teaching polygamy. And they I think would deny that. If they were asked outright, they would say, no, we don't practice that.
Well, and I remember your story, which is why I mentioned it, about this guy cheating, Hawkins, right?
Israel Hawkins, the leader.
Cheating on his wife with the secretary, and then that's why polygamy started. So, I don't. And I'll just say this, and then we'll close it out, is that on my other podcast, the dating podcast, I recently did a lot of interviews about polyamory and non-monogamy.
Yes.
So there is a trend going on now where couples are experimenting with that stuff, but they're not marrying other people. They're just sharing their sexual lives with threesomes and stuff, which has been around since Caligula.
I'm going to say that I think the difference in that is that you've got all consenting adults, whereas in this polygamy thing, at least in the House of Yahweh with the cult, you've got, Leanne got married at 17. She was very young.
She had no say.
No, and she was in a monogamous marriage for 11 and a half years until they brought in the second wife.
And he would go over to have sex with her, and I guess she had to submit to that.
That was the expectation, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all I can say is I hear stories like this from people who stayed long after I left, and I think, I'm glad I left when I did. I'm thinking I got out before it got even crazier.
You did. You were smart, and your critical thinking kicked in, and you got away.
But, even like you think about people like Leanne, what choice did she have? When I left, she was maybe 13, maybe 14, something like that, 13, 14. No. So, she didn't have a lot of choice. She was there because her mom brought her there, and she didn't have a lot of choice. So, but I'm so glad to see where she is now. So glad to see where she is now.
Seems very happy, and the fact that she's going to go into holistic healing or something, it's wonderful. I wish her the best.
Absolutely. So, so once again, thank you, Leanne, for coming on the show and sharing your story. And we want to thank all of you as well for tuning in to Cultumatum. Your support is always greatly appreciated. And if you enjoyed today's episode, if you could just take a moment to rate and review us on platforms such as Apple and Spotify, especially the reviews on Apple. We can only do the rating on Spotify, but on Apple, you can leave a review, and that does help us out and boost our numbers. So we would appreciate it if you could take the time to do that if you're listening to us today on Apple. And don't forget to follow, share, and keep listening to all of our latest episodes.
You can also connect with us by joining our Facebook group, Cultumatum Podcasts, where we dive deeper into these important topics.
And you can find us on additional social media platforms, including Instagram, Pinterest, TikTok, YouTube, and Threads.
If you have a personal experience with cult or human trafficking that you'd like to share, reach out to us at cultumatumpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
And if you are an ex-cult member and you are looking for any additional support, you can consider joining the Cult Escape and Recovery group on Facebook.
You can also check out my other podcast, the Anonymous Andrew Modern Dating Podcast. If you'd like to help us with the cost of maintaining the podcast, you can support us to buy us a coffee, link in our show notes. So in the show notes, you'll see a little link that says buy us a cup of coffee or something to that effect. And that'll take you to another page where you can donate to the show. And every bit helps in our mission to spread awareness about cults and human trafficking.
Yes, and as always, stay safe, stay informed, and remember, you are not alone.